Afternoon, everyone, and it's my pleasure today to do a moderation of a wonderful my gentlemen who are sitting on right side for me. Maybe I'll start with a small introduction for them. While you already heard and you see the pictures, what great work they are doing, and these words are in Hindi. बिना कुछ किए ही जय जयकार नहीं होती and कोशिश करने वालों की कभी हार नहीं होती. I think these are the two gentlemen which defines these words, the resilience, tenacity. They have been founder, CEO of those two companies, wonderful companies they have been working. So without further ado, let me start in a conversation now, and maybe I'll start with you, Ramesh, first. While we talk about bridging the gap in bioeconomy and global impact, how do you define bioeconomy from your perspective? And what kind of role is it playing in scaling the whole health innovation, not only in India, but globally?
Um, I guess you can define bioeconomy as anywhere where the bio world um, meets the world of applications. So we've been used to human health for the longest time. We're all getting old. In general, humans are living longer, so the need for health services is growing. Our understanding of diseases is getting better, therefore the need to address those diseases is growing. The previous panel discussion was a testament to that fact. More and more, we are learning more about the animal world, more about the plant world. And most importantly, we are able to control the bio world itself today. We can create artificial organisms, we can make organisms behave in certain ways to create products that can then be applicable. For example, there are companies creating new types of bread by engineering yeast to produce things with more protein, etc. So just the number of ways in which we can intervene with the biological world to have an impact on health, animals, plants, products of various kinds. I think that's growing, and that's what is constituting the overall bioeconomy, I guess. And that just creates a lot of opportunity for everybody to find their own niche and see how we can play there. And hopefully, the long-term vision is that we can make a real dent on human health, make the earth a better place in terms of the animals and the plants and all of that, right? And in sustainability long-term.
Yeah, thank you, Ramesh. Maybe what do you think, Alok, from your perspective, bioeconomy is?
Yeah, thanks for having us. So in simple terms, I think if we look around us in our homes, the food we've been eating is sort of moving to an era of being bioengineered in the future. The table that we have is sort of a derivation of the natural sort of biosource that we've used. And the vaccines we've just taken has been a success story of industrial biotech growing out. So largely the bioeconomy is something that where there is a sort of a biotech or a bio, or when I say bio, there are three main segments. We're looking at biomanufacturing, bioagri, and bioservices. So if it's a pharma company, they're probably doing some work with the CRO back in India, even if it's an international company. So that's a contributor to the bioeconomy of the country. Biomanufacturing, any vaccine manufacturer, anyone who's involved in manufacturing any sort of chemicals, for example, contributes to the bioeconomy. Bioagri, a large contributor. The food, not just for us, but for the cattle and then the animal feed is a large part of our sort of economy as well. So collectively, all of this put together today contributes to about $150 billion in India. And Karnataka, now that we're here, is a $31 billion contributor to the bioeconomy. That's about a fifth. So with innovative policies coming out like the Bio E3 and even the state announcing its own sort of vision to be a $100 billion bioeconomy, all of these areas need to be accelerated. And I believe, most people in the room have some role or the other to play in accelerating this. So that's generally how I would sort of put under the umbrella of the bioeconomy is these three categories.
Thank you, Alok. Why you have the mic? So I know you. I've gone through your papers and some of the things you have done wonderfully. Especially it comes to the 3D printing. So how do you see 3D printing? Of course, it's an emerging field. Your company has done a lot of things on that. So I understand from cell to tissues and your next right tissues to organ. I think. So how do you see that fitting into the broader gamut of our bioeconomy in a global scale?
Sure. So we fall under the category of the biomanufacturing division that I just spoke about. Why? Because what we've been able to do is bring together a combination of engineering, which is additive manufacturing or 3D printing, software element, which is basically the operating system, the AI component, all of that coming in, biomaterials that become the raw material to actually achieving our end product, and bringing all of this together collectively with a good understanding of cell biology to engineer the tissue. So the whole industry is called tissue engineering, and what we're doing is growing from a cell to a tissue and potentially a tissue to an organ. So that's the human biology we're trying to mimic in the lab, and how we're doing it is through tissue engineering. So it falls under the gambit of the biomanufacturing, and why it's critical today is for two reasons. In the short term, the world is transitioning away from animal testing. It's either because customers don't want to anymore buy a product that is tested on an animal, or there are regulatory frameworks in place and in certain countries going to be put into place, which is encouraging even large industries like big pharma to move away from animal testing. So the alternatives is what they're looking for. And tissue engineering solutions like the ones we can create using our bioprinters will be those sort of alternatives. So largely what we've done today is sort of bring together the best of engineering and combined with these other smaller fields that I spoke about. Collectively, the technology convergence is what is enabling us to be an innovator in the space, and we see ourselves as a technology provider to FMCG, cosmetic that is looking at moving away from animal testing, R&D labs, all the way to big pharma that is now looking at a US FDA regulation called the Modernization Act that has come in, that's encouraging them to look at animal alternatives. So we are more of a platform that is enabling them to make this transition away. But the whole long-term goal of the company is to build bioprinted tissues and organs that can be going into patients for transplantation. So that's the holy grail that we sort of work towards. And technology is the key and focus for us to sort of help reach that vision.
You add one of your followers here for sure. I'm really looking forward to it. And now, Ramesh, moving to Strand Life Sciences, it's a known name. You have been a founder, CEO, and we know that there are a lot of strides which you have made in genomics. So, how do you see that playing the contribution towards when it comes to the leveraging it for the global economy? What are your thoughts around that, Ramesh?
So, genomics is an area that's really come of age, I would say, in the last decade. Even though Strand, we started 20 odd years ago, well before all of these developments happened, because we sort of could see that this is imminent. It was a little less imminent than we thought when we started. It took a little longer. But over the last decade, I mean, just the number of changes that have happened, the costs of sequencing have come down dramatically, which means it's become accessible to everyone. And now, with that accessibility, the applications that we can build, and I'll walk you through a few of those, and it's but natural that these applications are so fundamental to human health that, I mean, the consequences and the impact on the global economy is a given, right? So, thanks to COVID, I guess all of us learned, got a peek into the world of genomics, right? And in fact, that is also the biggest success of genomics, where within like a month or two of the virus becoming apparent, its sequence was known. With the sequence known, it could be fast-tracked into vaccines and all of that. That was also the biggest failure for us in India, if you look at it. We let the Delta wave come about, even though we had a good 6 months of lead time to get all our sequencing in place. We could have really identified that there's a new strain coming up, right? And that was not for lack of technology. It was lack of us organizing ourselves as a society. So the point is, we have the technology. We just have to organize ourselves to really make that impact. And the impact in other areas has been tremendous. Today we are able to, if there's an outbreak, and there's been, COVID-type outbreaks are rare, but smaller outbreaks keep happening. Today we are able to sequence, figure out the organism like in sometimes within 15 days of the first report of the outbreak, we have the organism, we put it into a vaccine process next. And I mean, the whole process just starts so fast, right? When it comes to other diseases, I mean, uh, many of you may not know about 1% of everybody, 1 out of every 100 people, particularly women, is at a very high risk for cancer. And that's an inherited risk. There's enough publications that show that hundreds of thousands of lives can be saved if everybody were to get screened and take proactive action, right? There are many people who have genetic diseases who go from pillar to post trying to find a diagnosis. Today, that's a very organized process of sequencing where we can figure out, at least in 50% of such cases, what is the problem, and that can help that family have a next child without that problem, etc. Right? Today, we can actually, from a blood draw, figure out whether there are signs of cancer lurking deep inside your body, and monitor that and make sure that action can be taken before the cancer even manifests itself. So there are just so many of these applications that are coming up. It's going to be an exciting world. Globally, there are companies trying to build and deliver these applications out to people, build the clinical evidence that's needed, build the awareness that's needed. So I see the next 5 years going to be a lot of action on this front.
Yeah, thank you, Ramesh. It's heartening to know how you see next 5 years, how the action will be coming in. But let's talk about some challenges, especially from India perspective when you see in the healthcare segment. What unique challenges from India while we have to scale up to a global level? What are the challenges, how you see, and how are you trying to address for Strand Life Sciences?
So healthcare in particular tends to be very geography specific, particularly the delivery of healthcare, because local regulations, local practices of various kinds, etc. Right? So in India, we have a unique situation compared to the US. In India, we have a largely uninsured economy. The fraction of insurance is increasing, but they cover the basic things. The amount that everybody is covered is relatively limited. So we have an out-of-pocket economy, which is a very rudimentary economy, so to say. In the US, we have a mature, payer-driven economy, highly regulated, etc. Right? So these worlds end up being very different. So when you try to build for one and go to the other, invariably you should prepare yourself for some knocks or the other. It's not easy. So in particular, our journey in India, the challenge is affordability is poor. So the cost of these tests, while it's been coming down, it's still of the order of 10, 20,000 rupees, which is high for India, right? But if you imagine it was hundreds of millions of dollars a decade ago, I mean, in that perspective, it's tremendous progress. But nevertheless, the challenge in India becomes, can you bring it down to 5,000, 2,000? How do you really make it mass scale? As I mentioned, 1 out of every 100 women has a high risk for cancer. If you have to screen everybody, like, you have to have a very cheap test. And so how do you do all of that, right? In the US, on the contrary, it's a very different story. In the US, it's a payer-driven economy. So if you make it to the reimbursement list, the rewards are plenty. The challenge becomes the capital. You have to last for like 10 years of losses of tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars every year to get to that point, right? Unless you have a very, very sharp single product, which, like in the previous panel, there were people who were focusing on one single product, right? And which is the right way to go in the US, right? So it's there are different challenges, I think. For us in India, I think we have to evolve into a more systematic economy where we don't leave it to the doctors and the patients to decide what's going on. It has to be something more institutional, where institutional reviews happen of various kinds, and at the same time, there's enough nimbleness to promote innovation. And with the capital that we have available in India, we have to start making these US forays that people have started making, and see how we can actually play in that market.
Thank you, Ramesh. Alok, what are your views on this?
Sure, I'd like to look at it as in two ways. One, the challenges, and then the opportunities. The current challenges we see is one, just broadly at a macro level, about 3.5 to 4% is the average year-to-year sort of contribution as part of GDP that we're seeing in the bioeconomy. But the bioeconomy in India is growing in double-digit growth rates, and the center and the state that we are in today also, both of them are very bullish about this sector growing. So I think with that, there needs to be more money that is put in by government to boost the entire sector. And that also boils down to what we're seeing today. The reality is that researchers who want our tech do not have the large R&D budgets. And today, if we don't invest in the R&D today, we're not going to see the fruits in the future. So the lack of a large amount of research capital is a big challenge that we're seeing. And the fact that India is not really creating regulation fast enough, because globally, we shouldn't really be waiting for the US FDA to create regulation all the time. Yeah, CDSCO and other ICMR and other bodies could take sort of the leadership role and start creating innovative regulation, because we come from a perspective of building tech, but if the regulatory pathways are not clear, we will unfortunately not have a big market in India, but there's markets opening up globally. So that's the challenge. The opportunity I see is the fact that being a company that's sort of homegrown and built it out, we see very good talent pool. What we've done is truly amazing. We've been very agile. We've been able to customize the tech. So this is what is attractive to even international customers. So the real idea of actually making in India, sort of scaling up, we're able to do here, and that's where the sort of ecosystem has helped us. And the second opportunity I see is if India, for a product like ours, it's in a highly unregulated field, because today a bioprinter is classified as what you just say, go get a CE certificate on the machine, but that's not enough. We're positioning this to be a critical medical instrument that will be in the future sitting in a hospital room, creating a product that will go into a patient. But all of this pathway is not clearly defined in any regulatory framework, neither here nor globally. So that's the opportunity India has, is sort of if it sort of takes the forward step and starts creating a good framework, companies like us could thrive, and global other companies could also come to India, because if the regulatory pathways are clear, they will want to create downstream patient-specific solutions in India. So that's sort of the opportunity I see.
And so it definitely comes out that we have a runway and we need to move fast, especially on the regulatory side, whether the bodies like ICMR or CDSO can help us in this. So one more question in the interest of time. How do you see 3D printing technology? You talked about it is still unregulated or not fully regulated, let's say. How can we use it to scale from a global perspective? Especially, there are global health challenges in other countries as well. So not only the developed nation, even the developing nations as well. So where do you see and how do we see that we can play a role?
Sure. I mean, generally the cost of healthcare today is so expensive. The cost of medicines are so expensive. So if you go back to the grassroots and figure out why that is what it is, it's generally because so much money, when I say so much, it's billions of dollars are spent on successful R&D, and the odds of success for any sort of drug that starts with the drug discovery all the way to successfully being launched in market is low single digit percentages. So with all of this, the ones who are successfully bringing products to market are doing it, but at a heavy cost. Eventually, as consumers, we tend to take the burden of paying sort of excessively high amounts for certain medication. So how could we sort of play a role as a technology company in sort of fixing this? Is basically add value to the R&D pipeline that currently exists. So with regulations such as the US FDA Modernization Act that I spoke about, one of the key things is to accelerate the drug development process. The FDA has asked pharmaceutical companies to start looking at alternatives, and we are one of the alternatives, bioprinted tissues. Use of AI in drug discovery is one of the alternatives. Through use of technology in sort of a very archaic sort of process which hasn't changed in many decades, there is value in two ways. One, cost saving as well as time saving. So we've seen the record pace at which vaccines came to market during the pandemic. So now that has set the sort of the benchmark to say, why can't pharma companies also bring medication faster to consumers? So with that, they need to adopt to technology, and one of the key things we can provide is unique solutions like an organ on a chip, for example, which if you want to visualize what it is, look at a microfluidic channel which can be bioprinted with multiple tissue types. And when you're doing a specific study, you're trying to understand the impact that it will have on the target tissue or the organ. For example, you're making medicine for the heart, and also trying to understand the effect it might have on a secondary organ like the liver, which eventually has to flush it out of the system. So such a process that we can create through a solution in the lab will help them mimic in a more real-time environment how it is inside the human body or in vivo. So those are sort of unique solutions we're able to create, and the adoption needs to come in, and the acceptance needs to be there with regulatory approvals. Then there is definitely a sort of disruption that we are seeing in the entire cycle of pharmaceutical drug development, moving away from animal testing, and also potentially having clinical solutions that can get rid of organ transplant waitlists in the future.
Thank you, Alok. I wish we could have more time to listen to you and Ramesh. Maybe I'll take last 20 seconds, Ramesh, especially when you work on genomics. Data is the key for you. So data-driven, how do you see the whole precise medicine can help us bridge the gap between developed nations and emerging economies? Maybe quick 20, 30 seconds from you.
So, data is clearly the most important currency going forward. At the same time, in the world of healthcare, data will be the last to make its impact, because looking inside the human body, that data has not yet come out by and large. So nothing to train on at the moment, very little to train on. But if we can break down all the silos that exist and organize the data well going forward, then there is hope that we can actually bring that vision to reality.
Thank you so much. I'll take maybe last 20 seconds to pass on also one message. You heard two experts talking about how the economy going. Maybe I'll give you one small a gift, because I come from eye care industry, and without any investment, if you have to go back and practice this at home with your family, friends, and colleagues, please do it. It is called 20-20-20 rule. For while we have a lot of time we are spending on all the electronic gadgets, if you just remind, after every 20 minutes, you have to look for approximately 20 feet distance just for 20 seconds. So 20 feet, 20 minutes, 20 seconds. That will avoid a lot of chances of having myopia. And I think especially for the younger generation which is coming in, so as we celebrate, the whole world is celebrating World Sight Day, it becomes my responsibility as Alcon to make this group aware. So thank you so much, nasscom and our esteemed panelists. Big round of applause for our panelists today.
Thank you
Thank you so much.